we need to talk about something that's been bothering me since Volume 2 dropped on Christmas Day. Everyone's arguing about whether Steve dies or if Eleven loses her powers, and those are fair questions. But I think we're all preparing for the wrong finale here. Volume 2 didn't just give us answers. It completely rewrote what this story has been about for 9 years. And after going through these episodes multiple times, connecting what we learned to the stage play, I'm pretty convinced the Duffers have been hiding the real villain this entire time. We've been so focused on Vecna that we haven't noticed what's been waiting in the shadows. So today we're breaking down 3 theories that would fundamentally change how we understand this entire series. We're talking about what the Upside Down actually is, why Henry Creel might not be the real threat, and the devastating ending I think the Duffers are building toward while making us look the other way. By the end of this, you're going to see December 31st coming from a completely different angle. Dustin's discovery in Brenner's journals is the single biggest reveal in Stranger Things history, and I don't think people have fully processed what it means yet. The Upside Down isn't a dimension. It never was. It's a wormhole connecting Earth to another realm that Dustin immediately calls the Abyss, after recognizing it from his Dungeons and Dragons knowledge. Think about what that means for a second. We spent 5 seasons believing the Upside Down was the source of all the evil plaguing Hawkins. We thought Eleven accidentally created it or opened it that night in 1983 when Brenner forced her to touch the Demogorgon. The guilt from that has defined her character for years. She's been carrying the weight of thinking she caused all of this. But the Upside Down is basically just a tunnel. That frozen-in-time mirror version of Hawkins from November 6th, 1983 is the bridge connecting our world to something far worse. The Abyss is where Vecna actually lives. That red wasteland with the sulfurous yellow sky that we saw when Holly briefly escaped. That's the real threat. The whole structure is held together by this massive sphere of exotic matter. That massive sphere Nancy shot at in episode 6, thinking it was some kind of shield generator. She didn't destroy it because it's too dense for conventional weapons, but she destabilized it enough to create vulnerabilities. That's the crack in the foundation that Operation Beanstalk is designed to exploit. Here's what gets me about the Abyss. When Holly escaped and tried to run, the geography was wrong. She could see these massive towers in the distance, but when she moved toward them, she didn't get any closer. Space itself wasn't working the way it should. The dimension was keeping her lost on purpose. That's not just another planet or alternate Earth. That's something fundamentally alien where the normal rules don't apply. And the Mind Flayer has been there the whole time, waiting in that place, ancient and patient. Everyone's preparing for 11 versus Vecna as the final battle. The psychic showdown we've been building towards since season 4. But what if that's not the real fight at all? What if Vecna is just the warm-up and the actual horror starts after he's defeated? The stage play The First Shadow tells us something crucial that Volume 2 only hints at. In 1959, 8-year-old Henry Creel went missing for 12 hours in Nevada. He was somehow transported to the Abyss, and when he came back, he was fundamentally changed. The play shows us that the Mind Flayer didn't just scare him, it possessed him. It planted itself in his mind like a seed that would grow over the next several decades. Volume 2 shows us the memory that Henry has buried deepest in his consciousness, the one Max and Holly have to fight through elaborate mental barriers to reach. Young Henry in his Boy Scout uniform finds this terrified scientist stumbling through the woods covered in blood and clutching a silver briefcase. The guy is so paranoid and traumatized that he pulls a gun on a child. Henry fights for control of the weapon, gets shot through the hand, and then picks up a rock and beats the man to death. He doesn't stop when the scientist goes still. He keeps striking again and again. That's the moment Henry became a murderer. That's when something dark could slip inside. When Henry opens the briefcase afterward, his eyes go wide at whatever's inside, and the memory goes fuzzy because even Vecna's mind won't look directly at it. The Duffers told Variety that we're only seeing half of that core memory, which means the finale is going to show us what happened next. The briefcase contained stolen technology from a government experiment that had accidentally sent people to the Abyss. Based on the play's timeline, this is right around when Henry first encountered the Mind Flayer. And here's what I think happened. The Mind Flayer found Henry at exactly the right moment, right as this troubled 8-year-old was doing to a human being what the Mind Flayer wants to do to all life. It recognized him as the perfect vessel. Henry's powers, his abilities, his entire transformation into Vecna all come from the Mind Flayer. He's not the source of evil. He's the weapon through which an ancient evil could manifest in our world. The play shows young Henry as fundamentally a victim who gradually gave way to full Mind Flayer control. That distinction between Henry Creel, the corrupted child, and Vecna, the Mind Flayer's puppet, is going to be critical to how this resolves. What's been bothering me about Volume 2 is how quiet the Mind Flayer has been. We've barely seen it. For something that was such a massive threat in seasons 2 and 3, it's been remarkably absent this season. That feels deliberate to me. In warfare, you don't commit all your forces to preliminary battles. You wait for the decisive moment and then you strike with everything. What if the Mind Flayer has been conserving its power in the Abyss this whole time? We've seen fragments of it pass through gates. We've seen it possess Will and Billy, create that spider monster from melted people. But we've never seen its true form at full power in our dimension. What if that's what the finale is building toward? Think about Vecna's entire plan through this lens. Why is he so focused on merging dimensions instead of just conquering Earth with the forces he already has? Because he's opening a doorway for his master. Why does he need 13 children's powers amplified in that specific configuration? Because the Mind Flayer needs that exact type of psychic energy to cross dimensional barriers. Everything Vecna is doing is designed to bring the Abyss close enough to Earth that the Mind Flayer can enter our reality at full strength. Vecna is Darth Vader, powerful, terrifying, seemingly unstoppable, but ultimately serving someone far worse. And when that greater evil finally reveals itself, everything we thought we understood about this story changes. We need to talk about the most devastating conversation in Volume 2. In Episode 7, Kaylee tells Eleven that the only way to truly end the cycle is for both of them to stay in the Upside Down when it collapses, to sacrifice themselves so their blood can never be used to create more children like them. Kaylee lays out the logic with brutal clarity. Dr. K's facility with those pregnant women dying in hospital beds, their bodies rejecting Kaylee's blood, babies born with catastrophic mutations are not surviving at all. That's not going to stop just because they defeat Vecna. Even if they destroy every gate and seal the Abyss forever, there will always be another Dr. Brenner, another Dr. K, another government program trying to weaponize these abilities. As long as Eleven and Kaylee exist, as long as their blood can create superpowered children, they will be hunted. They will find you, Kaylee says. No matter where you go, no matter how well you hide, they will find you and they will create more. More like us, more like Henry. Children who will be twisted into weapons, and it will be our fault for surviving. Eleven is 19 years old. She's only just started understanding what it means to be a person instead of a weapon. She has Mike and Hopper and Joyce. She has friends and a future. The idea of giving all that up, of dying when she's only just learned what happiness feels like, is unbearable. But at the end of Episode 7, there's this look that passes between her and Kaylee. Eleven glances at Mike with so much love and pain, then looks back at Kaylee and gives this tiny nod. She doesn't say yes out loud, but she's not saying no either. The Duffers have said in multiple interviews that they don't kill characters for shock value. They want deaths to serve the story, to mean something beyond just making the audience sad. So, killing Eleven after everything she's been through, after she's finally found family and purpose beyond being a weapon, would that actually serve the story? Or would it just be cruel? Here's what I think happens instead. Eleven doesn't die, but she loses her powers permanently. The strain of fighting both Vecna and the Mind Flayer at the same time, of pushing herself beyond her limits to protect everyone, burns out her abilities completely. The parts of her brain that generate psychic powers get destroyed in the process. And suddenly she's no longer valuable to the military. Her blood becomes useless for creating new test subjects. She can live a normal life with Mike without constantly looking over her shoulder. But she loses the thing that's defined her since she was born. She loses the abilities that made her feel powerful and useful and special. That's its own kind of death, even if Jane the person survives physically. It's bittersweet. Eleven gets to live and have that normal future she's been dreaming about, but freedom comes at a cost. She has to figure out who she is without the powers that have been her entire identity. Kaylee, though, I think Kaylee makes a different choice. She's been imprisoned and exploited longer than Eleven. She doesn't have the same support system or hope for a normal life. I think she chooses to stay in the Upside Down when it collapses. She chooses death to guarantee no one can ever use her again. It's tragic and it would hurt because we've only just gotten to know her this season, but it feels right for her character. So here's how I think the finale actually plays out. Operation Beanstalk proceeds mostly as planned. The team lets Vecna start his dimensional merge spell. The Abyss begins descending toward the Upside Down. The Squawk radio tower pokes through one of the rifts, creating that physical bridge between dimensions that the rescue team can use. Eleven, Coley, and Max engage Vecna psychically. Max guides them through his mindscape using all the knowledge she gained while trapped in Camazotz. Kali creates illusions to confuse him and manipulate his perception. Eleven brings the raw power. It's the battle we've been building toward for 2 seasons. And then right when it seems like they might actually win, when Eleven is about to land the killing blow, the Mind Flayer reveals itself. Not as fragments or shadows, but in its true form, with its full, terrible power. It manifests in the battle, either in Vecna's mindscape or attempting to cross into our reality through the dimensional merge. And we realize that Vecna was never the endgame. He was the tool being used to open the door. But this is where Henry Creel, the human part that still exists somewhere buried inside Vecna, breaks free for one final moment. Not a full redemption arc because Henry has done terrible things that can't be erased, but a brief flash of humanity shining through the monster. A reminder that he was a victim before he became a perpetrator. Maybe he helps Eleven figure out how to hurt the Mind Flayer. Maybe he uses what's left of his strength to hold it back long enough for Mike's bomb to detonate. Maybe he just gives her crucial information before Vecna's consciousness crushes him back down. It's brief and it's tragic, but it adds complexity to his end. Mike's bomb goes off next to the exotic matter. The sphere destabilizes. The wormhole structure collapses and the abyss gets severed from our reality. Everything's still trapped in the upside down when this happens. The Mind Flayer, the remaining monsters, all that ancient malevolent corruption gets sealed on the other side forever. The tunnel between dimensions falls apart and Hawkins is finally free. Look, the Duffers could surprise us completely, they always do. But after going through Volume 2 frame by frame and connecting it back to the play, this is where the evidence points. The Mind Flayer as the true villain, hidden in plain sight for 9 years. Vecna getting one moment of tragic humanity before the end. 11 surviving but losing her powers. And probably one major character, most likely Steve based on how they've been setting up his hero arc, not making it out of the upside down alive. The finale drops December 31st and we'll know soon enough whether any of this is close. Drop your theories in the comments because I want to know what you think happens when Vecna falls and the real battle begins. Are we actually fighting the Mind Flayer at the end? Is Henry Creel going to turn on his master? Let me know what you're expecting. Hit subscribe if you want the post-finale breakdown because we are going to have so much to talk about once we know how this actually ends. I'll see you after New Year's Eve. Whatever happens, we had this 9-year journey together. That's worth something.